Episode 4 picks up with Helly still in the break room with Mr. Milchek. He says to her, "I'm afraid you still don't mean it. We'll try again in the morning." So she spent the remainder of that day in the break room. We see her leave for the day. She's disheveled. She's tired. She's out of it. They head over to the elevator. She goes in the elevator. It shuts and opens up right away to the next day. So it's instantly for her innie that she's back in the same situation. They go right back to the break room. And she says to Mr. Milchek, "I read it 300 times yesterday." He says, 259. "Again, please." Now, right before she's about to start up again, she hears a voice and she says, "What the hell is that voice?" Mr. Milchek ignores her. She continues, breaks down. She really apologizes, but he just says, "Do it again." Back at Mark's house, he picks up the cell phone that was on the floor that we saw last week, and all recent incoming calls are from a blocked number. Then back at work, Mark's innie found the map that PD had left for him, that PD had hoped that he would find it. Then Bert from Optics and Design stops by. He brings in the new handbook totes, and Irv is very excited about this. Dylan is being rude and tells him to drop off the tote bags and bounce. Before leaving, Bert leaves directions to Optics and Design, O&D as they call it, for them to stop by whenever they want. Irv immediately gathers his things and heads over to O&D. He said to Mark, "It's absurd we never visited them before. It was Kier's vision for all of us to be working together." Dylan comments on the rumor that O&D has massacred a department before, and that's why they keep them separated, so he doesn't trust them. Helly shows up back to their space. Mark says, "How many times?" She apologized 1,072 times. Helly asks, "What about the voice behind the door?" Dylan said, "You mean the crying baby?" So they both heard different things, and Mark pops in and says, "You're not supposed to talk about it," so they stop. Irving then shows up to O&D to visit Bert. Bert shows him around. They talk, they get along, and eventually their hands touch and they decide to hold hands for a second. This freaks Irving out and he leaves. On his way back, he spots Rickon's book. Then Helly finds the map and she shows Dylan. He's surprised that he didn't turn it in. Helly then says to Mark, "Your best friend left this for you and you don't give a shit?" He says, "You're right, I don't give a shit," and he shreds it. Irv then shows up to show the team the book. They weigh on what to do about it, and then Mark opens the book and he sees there's a message to Mark. He says he'll turn it into Milchek. Helly then sneakily grabs a paper cutter and she walks into Miss Cobell's office and she threatens to cut her fingers off if Miss Cobell doesn't give her a camera so she can film her resignation. Cobell tells Milchek to grab one and she films the message. She then gets walked to the elevator, gets on, tells Mr. Milchek that she was never sorry, and then the elevator shuts, opens right back up, and she has a DVD in her hand. She plays the DVD, and it turns out that her Audi is very adamant that she will not let her resign. She even scolds the innie Helly for threatening to cut off her fingers. She says, "If you ever do anything to my fingers, know that I will keep you alive long enough to regret that." And then she says, "Your request is denied." Mark is at home now, and he gets an alert that Petey has died. Right after this, he hears that phone vibrate again. Grainer goes to Cobell's office and asks if she heard from the board yet. He claims that Petey is neither of their faults. Cobell tells Grainer that they need to get his chip, and Grainer reminds her that he's going to be incinerated after the funeral. Then we see Mark is at the funeral, and Mrs. Selvig, aka Miss Cobell, shows up, and they are both surprised to see each other. She walks up to Petey's daughter at the funeral, and Mark goes to grab a drink. Mark then meets Nina, Petey's ex-wife, who asks, "You're from Lumen? So you didn't even know him at all." He then meets June. Him and June get to talking, and June asks, "So you knew him from work?" And he says, "Yeah." So she goes, "Oh, so you're one of those." And she calls him out for doing Severance. She says that's not the way that people are supposed to deal with their problems. A video is then playing of June and Petey playing music together. Then Miss Cobell sneaks off to the body. She cuts the chip out of Mark's head with a drill. After the funeral, Mark drives to the site where his wife died in a car accident. Back at the office, Cobell gives Milchek Petey's chip and asks him to bring it to diagnostics to check it out. Miss Casey then shows up, and she asks Miss Casey to run a special wellness session with Mark. Says he needs it. Irv then runs into Bert. Bert says he's sorry and he embarrassed himself. Irv assures him that he didn't, and he asks if he wants to go for a walk. He agrees. Mark is then in the bathroom stall reading Rickon's book, and he seems to find it profound, while his Audi could care less about it. Helly tells Dylan that she is leaving for the day, and we see that she has an extension cord in her hand as she leaves. She then picks up a trash can on her walk. We cut to Dylan. He finds that Mark has stashed the book. Cut to Mark in the wellness session. Cut to Coble. He's watching them in the wellness section. Back to the session. He's supposed to sculpt what he's feeling out of clay. Helly then calls for the elevator as Dylan is reading the book. Irv is at O&D. Mark is sculpting. The elevator then appears and Helly sets up for a suicide attempt. Irv finds a passage in O&D leading to a huge space with a lot more people. So it turns out there's more than just 2 people in this department. Helly then puts the rope around her neck, and we see what Mark has been working on in the wellness session. He built a tree, just like the tree that his wife died at. Then we cut to Helly. She has the noose around her neck, kicks the trash can, and then Helly drops as the episode ends.
Big thanks to Dan from Scene Invaders for doing that recap. Go check out their channel and subscribe. If you don't see the next episode in the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a few days. Be nice in the comment section, and I have a Patreon, so go support the channel by buying a t-shirt or signing up for the Patreon.